Some towns don't die. They just start over. Whitmore, Alaska, isn't on any modern map for a reason. Every sunrise there is borrowed, every officer replaced. And when the second dawn wakes, there are no survivors. Sit back, dim the lights, and put on your headphones, because what you're about to hear is more than a story. It's a warning, and consider subscribing to our channel for more terrifying true-style horror stories. The bush plane's propeller slowed to a heavy click, click, click before the engine finally gave out. The pilot didn't say much, just pointed a thumb toward the single building squatting at the end of the snow-packed airstrip and muttered, "Whitmore, don't stay out after dark." That was my welcome. I grabbed my duffel, stepped out into a wind that felt more like a warning than weather. The snow wasn't falling. It was floating, slow and deliberate, like it was deciding where to land. Every sound out here had weight. My boots crunched once, then the echo just stopped. A faded wooden sign leaned by the chain-link fence. "Welcome to Whitmore, a safe haven since 1923. The paint was flaking, the word safe almost scratched off. I told myself it was just small-town neglect. Still, something about that missing word made my chest tighten. I'd been transferred from Anchorage after what they called a procedural lapse. My partner didn't make it through that one, and the department figured I needed quiet duty. Somewhere small, somewhere I couldn't screw up again. So they sent me north, to the end of every map worth printing. The town itself looked like it had been frozen mid-sentence. Rows of cabins, all dark except for the faint glow of oil lamps. A diner, a gas pump, a post office with boards nailed across its windows. The sky was supposed to be dimming, but the sun refused to set, just hovered low, a pale bruise bleeding light over the mountains. It wasn't just cold here, it was still, the kind of still that makes you start counting your own breaths. A man in a heavy coat trudged past me, head down, not a word. Another followed, clutching a paper bag like it was something alive. Nobody looked at me. Not curiosity, not even suspicion. Just that blank, hollow awareness you see in people who've already buried too many names. I tried to make a joke when I reached the terminal, if you could call that one-room shack a terminal. "Guess I'm your new lawman," I said to the clerk behind the desk. She didn't smile. She just slid a key across the counter. A small brass tag read WPD 1. "Chief's waiting," she said. "Don't keep her after sunset." I frowned. "Why? She's strict?" She looked past me, toward the window, where the light outside had gone from white to a strange amber haze. "No," she whispered, "because it's almost 3:07. The clock on the wall read 2:56 p.m. I thought she meant 3:07 p.m., but her tone said otherwise. I stepped back into the open and the air hit me like a living thing. Thick, sharp, metallic. The kind of cold that makes your ears ring. Somewhere in the distance, a bell chimed once. Then again. That's when I saw the station. A squat log building with a flickering porch light. The American flag half frozen in the wind. The radio antenna leaned like it had been struck by lightning years ago and never quite recovered. I paused at the door, snow dripping from my sleeves. My reflection in the glass looked wrong, slightly delayed, like the cold had slowed even me down. I told myself this was just isolation playing tricks, small-town nerves. But deep down, standing there on that porch, I felt something I hadn't felt since the night in Anchorage. The kind of dread that comes before you even know why you're afraid. Whitmore wasn't on most maps. Now I understood why. The Whitmore Police Department wasn't what I expected. No steel doors, no booking desks, just a cabin that smelled like wood smoke, coffee grounds, and something faintly metallic, like old blood on a badge. A single red bulb burned above the entrance, barely cutting through the fogged glass. I pushed the door open, and a small brass bell jingled somewhere in the rafters, a sound so out of place it almost made me laugh. Inside, the air was too warm. The heater hummed low, steady, like a heartbeat buried under the floor. The light flickered across mounted antlers, a faded American flag, and a stuffed moose head that loomed over the main desk. Its glass eyes followed me like it had been waiting. "Whitmore PD?" I called out. No answer. There were 2 desks, one empty, dust thick enough to hold a fingerprint. The other, cluttered with coffee rings and stacks of handwritten reports. I could see my breath even in the heat. Then came the voice, steady, sharp, and all authority. "Close that door before it follows you in." I turned. A woman stepped out from the shadows behind the file cabinet, tall, silver hair pulled into a knot. The kind of posture that tells you she's buried too many good men to put up with another fool. "Chief Marla Hensley," she said, offering a gloved hand. I shut the door behind me with a nervous laugh. "Cold air sure moves fast out here, huh?" Her eyes narrowed. "That wasn't what I meant." There was a pause, long enough for the heater's hum to sound like whispering under the floorboards. She moved past me, boots echoing on the plank floor, and poured herself coffee from a tin pot that looked older than the station. "You're from Anchorage," she said. "Internal Affairs didn't tell me why they sent you. I assume it's a story you don't like repeating." I shrugged. "Let's just say I made a call I couldn't take back." That earned a faint nod. "We all do, sooner or later." She motioned toward the window. Outside, the sun was still clinging to the edge of the mountains, like it didn't want to go down. "Whitmore doesn't run on the same clock as the rest of Alaska," she said. "You'll see." I tried to hide the confusion in my face, but she saw it anyway. "You think I'm talking in riddles? That's good. Means you still have a mind that asks questions. Just remember, here, some questions don't want answers." She walked over to a corkboard nailed to the wall. It was filled with missing person flyers, faded, edges curled from years of dryness. Not one looked recent. Some dates went back decades. "Search and rescue?" I asked. She looked back at me. Not exactly. The heater gave a low hiss, and for a moment the room dimmed like a cloud had passed in front of the light. But the window showed nothing but the same pale, endless day. The chief set her mug down, reached into a drawer, and slid a worn envelope across the desk toward me. "Before you start your night shift, read this." The envelope was soft with age. The paper inside yellowed, corners frayed. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, then said quietly, "Your real field manual." I pulled out the folded paper. Typed words, uneven and old, maybe from the 1960s. The top line read, "Whitmore Protocol, Night Division." "Is this a joke?" I asked, half grinning. "Like rookie hazing?" Her tone didn't move. "No one in Whitmore jokes after sunset." I scanned the page. 7 rules, short, precise. The kind of thing meant for survival, not training. My eyes caught the first one. Never answer a call from the forest after midnight. The dispatcher doesn't send those. I looked up, smirking. "This is folklore, Chief. Back home, we call this kind of stuff bunk." She stepped closer until I could smell the gun oil on her jacket. "Then consider it Alaskan bunk that's kept this town alive for 80 years. Her tone dropped lower. "Every officer who ignored those rules either disappeared or came back wrong. You'll hear stories. You'll think they're just stories, but when the sun dips behind the ridge and the river starts to hum, you'll remember my words." I folded the paper, trying not to show the chill creeping up my neck. "All right, Chief. I'll play along." She didn't smile. "This isn't playing. Whitmore has a rhythm. It doesn't like change." Her eyes flicked to the moose head mounted above us. "Even that thing? Been here since '42. The man who shot it wrote the rules. He lasted the longest." The heater suddenly coughed, sputtered, then went silent. The hum stopped. So did the warmth. The air felt like it dropped 20 degrees in a heartbeat. "Generators out again," I said, stepping toward the breaker panel. The chief's voice came firm and fast. "Leave it!" I turned back, confused. She was staring past me at the front door. The doorknob was slowly turning. We both stood still. No wind, No sound. Just that gentle, deliberate click, click, click. Then it stopped. The chief exhaled and reached for her holster. "You see," she said quietly, "Whitmore doesn't like new arrivals. It watches them first." She turned to me and handed me a small brass key. "Locker 1. Gear up. Patrol starts at sundown." I wanted to ask who or what had been at the door, but something in her face told me I didn't want the answer yet. When I stepped into the locker room, the envelope still in my hand, I heard the faint bell by the entrance jingle again. Only this time, no one had opened the door. The chief's office looked like it hadn't changed since the 1960s. Everything smelled like paper and oil, the kind of scent that clings to a place where time doesn't move forward anymore. A single desk lamp burned against the dark, throwing long shadows across the walls. Old case files were stacked in uneven towers. Some of them had the same names, repeated, crossed out, rewritten. The chief sat behind her desk, hands folded, eyes sharp. She didn't look tired. She looked haunted. "You got the letter," she said. "Yeah," I answered, setting the envelope on her desk. "I read the first line. Sounds like someone had a sense of humor." She didn't smile. "Those rules were written by Sergeant Miller in 1942. He died with that list in his hand. You'll read all of them before your shift tonight." I hesitated, waiting for the smirk that never came. "Chief, I've been in small towns before. They all have local legends, miners under the hills, lights in the forest, whatever. I'm not easily spooked." She leaned forward slowly. "Good, because fear's not the problem here. Forgetting is." She slid the paper back toward me, the same yellowed page I'd seen earlier. The edges had been burned at one corner, the words typed on an old manual typewriter that left faint ghosts of the letters beneath. I flattened it out. At the top, bold and simple, "Whitmore Protocol, Night Division." No seal, no name, no signature, just a series of numbers and rules. I started reading them aloud, half to myself. Rule 1, never answer a call from the forest after midnight. The dispatcher doesn't send those. I looked up. "You serious?" The chief took a long breath. "Every now and then, someone out there will call for help. A woman, sometimes a child. You'll hear your name, clear as day. We've traced those calls. They don't come from any phone in the county. First guy to check it out. We found his cruiser with the lights still on. No tire tracks leading in or out." Her tone didn't waver. "You don't answer the call. You don't go looking. You just turn off your radio and wait it out." I stared at her for a second, then continued reading. Rule 2. If you see headlights on Route 9 with no engine sound, pull over, turn off your lights, and wait. "Let me guess," I said. "Phantom drivers?" She leaned back. "Something like that. They come up behind you. Bright as day, no sound, no license plate. You'll see them pass. Sometimes they stop next to you. Don't look, don't follow. When your lights come back on, the road behind you will be gone for a few seconds. Then it returns. Always does." I frowned. "That's some weird atmospheric refraction, maybe." "Officer," she interrupted, "you don't have to believe the why. Just follow the how." I nodded, moving to the next. Rule 3. Never feed or talk to the children outside the station after dusk. That one hit different. "What children?" I asked. "You'll see them eventually. They don't belong to anyone. They never age. Some nights they come right up to the glass. Don't open the door, no matter what they say." Her eyes drifted toward the window behind me, the one looking out over the empty parking lot. For a second, I thought I saw her jaw tighten, like she was remembering something. Rule 4. At exactly 3:07 a.m., check the holding cell. Even if it's empty. Especially if it's empty. "What happens if you don't?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, "That depends on who's in it the next night." The room felt smaller then, like the air itself was pressing in. I moved to the 5th one. Rule 5. Don't look directly at the river when it freezes solid. I almost laughed. I think I can manage not to sightsee ice. But her tone stopped me cold. People say the river freezes in a single night. When it does, faces start forming under the surface. Some say they're the ones who broke the first rule. Others say it's the river trying to remember who it's taken. Rule 6. If you hear your own voice on the radio, don't respond. I raised an eyebrow. Now that one's straight out of a ghost story. She met my gaze, her voice lowering. You ever heard your own voice over dispatch, officer? I hesitated. No. Then pray you don't. We log every transmission. The ones that echo back, they don't have timestamps. They play on their own, like the signals coming from inside the static. I looked down at the last one. The words faint, but still legible. Rule 7. Before dawn, write your name on the board in the briefing room. If your name's already there, leave town immediately. That one didn't sound like superstition. It sounded like a threat. What's that about? I asked. She took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. Every officer who's made it through a night here signs their name before sunrise. It's tradition, but if you ever come in and see it's already there, same handwriting, same badge number, don't stay to ask why. Her tone dropped to almost a whisper. You won't make it to sunrise. I folded the page carefully and slid it back into the envelope. This is a lot to take in. It's Whitmore, she said simply. You'll learn to stop asking how. You'll just survive. There was a long pause. The heater hissed again, louder now, like something was crawling through the vents. Then a faint crackle from the radio on her desk. Static. Then a voice. My voice. Chief, this is Unit 3. I'm en route to... The rest cut off. I froze. I haven't keyed the mic once since I got here, I said quietly. Her eyes stayed on the radio, unblinking. Then we've got a problem. The static rose, filling the room, a hollow echo of breath between bursts. Then the voice came again, this time distorted. You left the door open. The chief's hand shot out, switching off the radio in one motion. Silent. She exhaled slowly. Looks like someone broke Rule 6 early. I opened my mouth to ask who, but then I saw it. Faint movement through the office window. The reflection of the moose head mounted behind me. Except its mouth was open now. They say your first night on duty always feels longer than it should. In Whitmore, it felt endless. The cruiser engine hummed low beneath me as I rolled down Main Street, if you could even call it that. 3 blocks, 1 gas station, 1 diner, and the flicker of an old neon sign that buzzed like it was dying. The chief had gone home with a warning that still echoed in my head. Stay in your vehicle after midnight. Keep the engine warm. Don't chase the things that call for help. I'd nodded, half listening. At the time, it sounded like the kind of folklore small towns used to scare rookies. But as the hours dragged by and the world outside grew quieter than any shift I'd ever worked, I started to understand. Whitmore didn't sleep. It just listened. The roads were lined with frost so thick it looked like salt. My tires made no sound, just a smooth, ghostly glide. Even the radio chatter had gone dead, leaving only that soft, static hiss, like breathing through snow. Dispatch, I tried. Unit 3, routine patrol, all quiet. No reply, just a pop of static and what sounded, for half a second, like whispering. I shook it off. Isolation does that. Makes you hear your own pulse. When the clock on the dash ticked over to 11:54 p.m., I turned onto Route 9. That's when I saw it. A pickup truck parked by the gas station, headlights on, exhaust drifting. Finally, something normal. Maybe a stranded motorist. I slowed, pulled up beside it. Whitmore PD? I called out through the rolled-down window. You need assistance? Nothing. The driver's door hung open slightly, swaying with the wind. I stepped out, flashlight in hand, boots crunching on the ice. The air was heavy, the kind that bites your lungs and keeps the sound close. Sir? I called again. Still nothing. The truck engine was idling, but there was no key in the ignition. No footprints in the snow either. Just tire marks that led from nowhere and stopped right there. That's when I noticed the inside of the windshield. It was frozen from within. Not fog. Frost. Thin, swirling patterns, like fingerprints pressed from the other side. I backed up slowly, hand resting on my holster. My breath clouded in front of me. The clock on the dash read 12:01 a.m. Midnight. I remembered Rule 1. Never answer a call from the forest after midnight. The dispatcher doesn't send those. The radio hissed to life, sharp and sudden, making me flinch. Unit 3, a voice crackled through. It was the chief's tone, but wrong, slower, hollow. We've got a 911 ping, off Ridge Trail. The forest. I swallowed hard. Copy that, I said automatically, before catching myself. Static answered. Then, faintly, help me. Not the chief. A woman's voice, weak, desperate. Please, I'm hurt. I can't move. The sound hit me deep, too real to ignore, too human. I looked out the windshield toward the tree line. Ridge Trail was a mile north, a dirt road swallowed by pines. I hesitated. This could have been a legit distress call. Alaska's full of stranded hikers, snowmobilers, hunters who vanish for days. But that rule, never answer a call from the forest after midnight. I sat there gripping the mic, heart pounding. Dispatch, I said, forcing my voice steady. Can you confirm source of that call? Silence. Then, another burst of static. This time, the same woman's voice whispered, "It's so cold. Please, officer." She said, officer. That's what did it. The detail, the specificity. My rational side took over. Protocol first, superstition later. I started the engine again and turned toward Ridge Trail. The headlights carved through the fog as I rolled off the main road. Trees loomed like dark spines against the pale horizon. The deeper I drove, the heavier the static became, now layered with faint breathing, soft and rhythmic, like someone was in the back seat. Whitmore Dispatch, this is Unit 3, My words cut off, because the road ended. Just ended. The path dropped straight into the frozen riverbank. My headlights reflected off solid ice. No bridge, no trail continuation. Nothing but black water beneath white frost. And there, right at the edge, a red scarf caught on a branch, fluttering in the still air. I stepped out, slow. My flashlight beam cut through the fog, catching something strange. Footprints. Bare, small, leading away from the water and straight toward the tree line. They stopped about 20 feet in. "Hello?" I called out. My voice cracked on the last syllable. The radio hissed again, louder this time. Then my own voice came through. "Hello?" The exact same tone, the same hesitation. I froze. "No," I whispered. "That's not possible." Then, from somewhere ahead in the darkness, that same woman's voice again. "Please, over here." The flashlight flickered. For a split second, I saw movement, a pale figure, half hidden behind a tree, barefoot. I raised the light again, hands trembling. "Ma'am, this is Officer Reed with Whitmore PD. I'm here to help." No answer, just the soft crunch of snow, moving toward me. I took a step back. That's when the radio exploded with sound, my own voice again, this time screaming, "Run!" I turned and bolted toward the cruiser. The engine stuttered once before roaring to life. The headlights flickered. In the beam, that same red scarf, now lying on the hood. I hit the gas and tore out of there, snow spitting behind the tires. The road reappeared in the mirror like it had never been gone. I didn't stop until I reached the station. The clock on the dash read 3:06 a.m., 1 minute before the next rule. Rule 4. At exactly 3:07 a.m., check the holding cell, even if it's empty, especially if it's empty. And as I sat there catching my breath, the radio crackled again, soft, almost tender. "You shouldn't have come." Then, silence. The heater in the cruiser clicked off by itself, and from the station window, I could have sworn I saw someone standing inside, just behind the glass, wearing a red scarf. I didn't sleep after that first patrol. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that red scarf twisting in the headlights, heard my own voice screaming over the radio. "Run!" By morning, I'd written the report exactly how the chief would want it. Unverified 911 ping, no contact made, possible radio interference. No mention of the mimic voice, no mention of the missing road, no mention of the figure in the woods. I wasn't ready for the department's shrink. Not again. The chief didn't ask questions either. She just handed me coffee and said, "You made it through the first night? Most don't." That should have comforted me. It didn't. By dusk, I was back in the cruiser, the same road stretching ahead like a white scar in the snow. Same silence, same low hum of static under the radio. I told myself I wouldn't answer any calls tonight. I'd stick to the rules. But Whitmore doesn't like promises. At 11:38 p.m., dispatch crackled to life again. Same distortion as before. "Unit 3, respond to a 911 call off Ridge Trail. Possible stranded civilian." My hands froze on the wheel. Ridge Trail. The same road. I didn't reply, just sat there listening to the faint hiss of the transmission. Then the voice came, clear, almost soft. "Please, help me." Same woman, same tone. Only this time, she said my name. "Officer Reed, please, you were here last night." I slammed the radio off and stared at the windshield, breath fogging the glass. There's a point in every cop's career where instinct splits in two. One side screams procedure, the other whispers curiosity. I wish I'd listened to the first one. By midnight, I was halfway down Route 9, snow pelting the hood in slow, hypnotic waves. The GPS flickered. Coordinates locked on Ridge Trail again. Same as before. But this time, the display showed something else. A heartbeat icon. That's impossible. Department systems don't show biometric signals. I slowed the cruiser, headlights cutting through sheets of drifting snow. The entrance to Ridge Trail looked the same, narrow, swallowed by pines. But something had changed. The red scarf was gone. I took a deep breath and pulled in. The tires crunched over old frost, each turn of the wheel echoing through the still forest. After 50 yards, the radio turned itself back on. Static, then breathing. Not mine, not the chief's. Slow, wet, uneven. Then a whisper. "You came back." I froze. My flashlight beam flickered across the trees, catching the reflection of something metallic. A badge, half buried in the snow. I stepped out, knees sinking in the drift, and brushed it off. Badge number 2137. My badge number. I stumbled back, heart hammering. Looked toward the cruiser, and the driver's door was open. I hadn't left it open. The dome light glowed faintly, flickering like a candle. Inside, my radio handset dangled, swinging slowly. Tapping against the dash in rhythm. Tap, tap, tap. It was spelling something in Morse, I didn't know what. Then, from deep in the trees, I heard it again. "Help me." Not from the radio this time, from the woods themselves. It sounded closer, 50 yards at most. Against every rule, every instinct, I raised my flashlight and started toward the voice. "Ma'am," I shouted, forcing command into my tone. "This is Officer Reed with the Whitmore Police Department. Stay where you are." The woods swallowed my words. Snow fell heavier now. The beam caught movement, not human, not quite animal. The branches seemed to shift with every blink. Then, between two trees, I saw her. A woman, standing barefoot in the snow, hair matted, skin bluish-white. She was facing away, her arms hanging limply by her sides. "Ma'am." She turned her head just slightly, and I saw the left side of her face was wrong. Frozen mid-scream like ice had grown through her jaw. "Please," she whispered again. You have to help him." "Help who?" Her eyes lifted, not at me, but behind me. I turned. At the edge of the clearing stood another figure, a man in uniform, his face hidden in shadow, his breath fogging the air in slow, steady rhythm. He was holding something, a radio handset. I aimed my light at him. "Whitmore PD, identify yourself." He stepped closer. The badge glinted. 2137, mine. I stumbled backward, light shaking. "This isn't funny. Who the hell are you?" The radio on his shoulder crackled. My own voice came out. "Who the hell are you?" The same words, same timing, perfect mimicry. Then the woman in the snow began to laugh, quiet, fragile, like glass breaking. Her body started to sway, and the sound didn't match her lips anymore. It was echoing all around me. "Rule 1, the chief's voice whispered in my head. "Never answer a call from the forest after midnight." I bolted. Branches tore at my jacket, snow blinding me. I didn't care. I ran until I saw the faint orange glow of my cruiser headlights. But when I reached it, the hood was still warm, and the engine was already running. The driver's seat was empty, but the radio mic was still off the hook. And from the speaker came my voice again. "I'm here. I'm still here. Please, someone." I yanked the mic out of the socket and threw it onto the passenger seat. My breath came in sharp bursts, each exhale fogging the inside of the glass. Outside, the snow had stopped falling. Everything was silent. Then, in the reflection of the windshield, I saw it, faint, behind me. A figure sitting in the back seat. Head tilted slightly to the left, face pale, eyes frozen wide. My own. I didn't look back. I slammed the car into gear and tore out of there, tires screaming against the ice. When I reached the main road, the radio flicked on again. The chief's real voice this time. "Unit 3, she said softly. "You answered it, didn't you?" I couldn't speak. She sighed, long and tired. "They always do the first time. Listen to me, son. When you get back, go straight to the holding cell. Check it. Don't wait for 307. "Why?" I whispered. Her tone went low. "Because if you don't, you'll be the one sitting inside when it's checked." I didn't ask what that meant. I just drove, the headlights cutting through a fog that wasn't there before. And as I crossed back into town, I caught one last look in the rearview mirror. The back seat was empty, but the red scarf was wrapped neatly around the headrest. You'd think after a night like that, I'd have learned. But Whitmore has a way of teaching you lessons twice, once with a warning, and once with the body count. By the second night, I'd stopped pretending to understand this place. The chief didn't speak to me that morning. She just slid a fresh thermos across the table and said, "You still hear the voice?" I didn't answer. She didn't press. The rest of the day passed like a bad dream. Too quiet, too still. Even the snow fell without sound, blanketing the streets like a cover-up. By the time the sun started bleeding into the horizon, I was back in the cruiser, ready for another patrol I didn't want. The clock read 11:47 p.m. when I turned onto Route 9. Empty stretch of two-lane road, nothing but black pines and that eerie twilight glow that never fully dies up here. The radio was off. I'd stopped trusting it. For the first 30 minutes, everything was calm. Too calm. Then, the lights appeared. At first, I thought it was just another car up ahead. Twin beams piercing the fog. Except no sound, no hum of an engine, no tires grinding over ice, just those two floating circles of light, hovering maybe half a mile down the road. I slowed the cruiser. The headlights didn't move. They just hung there, steady, too perfect. Then I remembered Rule 2. If you see headlights on Route 9 with no engine sound, pull over, turn off your lights, and wait. For the first time, I didn't question it. I eased the cruiser to the shoulder, killed the engine, and turned off the headlights. The darkness swallowed me whole. The only sound was my own heartbeat. The two distant lights shimmered through the fog. Still there, but now, drifting closer. Not driving, drifting. like a pair of lanterns being carried by invisible hands. I leaned forward, trying to make out shapes, movement, anything that explained it, but there was nothing, just light. The fog began to thicken around the cruiser, pressing against the windows like breath on glass. I reached for my radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 3. I've got visual of possible vehicle anomaly on Route 9, no engine sound, no driver visible." "Copy?" Static. Then, faintly, my own voice. "Copy." I froze. The voice that answered wasn't delayed or distorted. It was mine. Same pitch, same rhythm. I dropped the mic. Outside, the lights moved again. Closer now, maybe 100 yards. Still silent, still perfect. But something inside the fog was changing. The light wasn't bouncing off the snow anymore. It was bending around it, like the fog itself was swallowing it whole. My dash cam flickered. The feed cut to black, then flashed back with a distorted image. Twin beams stretching toward the cruiser like eyes dilating in the dark. The car shuddered. No wind, no impact. Just a low vibration, like the air itself was being pulled tight. Then everything stopped. The lights went out. Total silence. For 5 long seconds, I sat there gripping the wheel, every muscle locked. Then, just as suddenly, the rearview mirror filled with light. 2 beams. Behind me. I turned my head, but the back window was pure white, completely flooded by those same lights, maybe 10 feet away. Still no sound. I couldn't even hear the snow hitting the roof. Just that thick, heavy quiet. My pulse thundered in my ears. The radio hissed again, faint and rhythmic. Then the voice came back. "You should have stayed on Route 9. It was a whisper this time, female, calm. But the voice wasn't coming from the radio anymore. It was coming from the back seat. I spun around. Nothing. Just the beam of white light cutting through the window, illuminating the dust in the air. "Chief?" I tried, barely managing to speak. "If you can hear me." The lights behind me flared once, brilliant, blinding, then vanished. Darkness. When my vision cleared, I looked out the windshield. No road, no fog, no headlights. Just a frozen stretch of forest and the faint outline of something standing in the middle of the road ahead. A person. They were facing the cruiser, arms at their sides, head tilted down. I flicked the high beams. Nothing. They didn't move. I grabbed my flashlight, opened the door slowly. The cold slammed into me like a wall. "Whitmore PD!" I called out, stepping closer. "Identify yourself." The beam of my light hit them, and I felt my stomach drop. It was a police uniform. Badge number barely visible beneath frost. 2137, mine. I took one step back, and the figure lifted its head. The face was mine too, pale, hollow-eyed, half lit by the faint shimmer of snow. Then, without a sound, its mouth opened. The headlights roared back to life, surrounding me in blinding light from every direction. My ears filled with a deafening absence, like silence made solid. Then, just as suddenly, everything went black. When I woke up, I was sitting in the cruiser, engine idling, dash cam light blinking. The clock read 3:06 a.m. I checked the rearview mirror. Nothing behind me but empty road. But when I looked down at my lap, there was something resting there. A frost-covered badge. Badge number 2137, mine. Only, when I turned it over, the back was stamped with words I'd never seen before. Property of Unit 3, retired. The radio crackled once, a single breath of static. Then the chief's voice came through, weary but steady. "Unit 3, if you're hearing this, keep driving. Don't stop until the lights fade. Do not turn around." Her voice trembled slightly. "They remember the ones who look." The headlights in my mirror flickered again, distant now, but moving. I shifted the cruiser into drive, hands shaking, eyes fixed on the endless white road ahead. Somewhere behind me, I swear I could still hear my own voice whispering in the static. Don't look back. And for once, I listened. By the time I made it back to the station, I felt hollow, not scared anymore, just drained, like the road had stripped something out of me and left the shell behind. The heater inside hummed steady, fighting against the cold bleeding through the walls. My breath fogged the air as I locked the cruiser, brushed the frost from my jacket, and stepped inside. The first thing I noticed was the silence, the kind of silence that isn't peaceful. It's listening. The chief wasn't there. Her coat hung on the rack, still dripping melted snow. Her office door stood half open, a single lamp burning inside. I didn't bother calling out. Whatever conversation needed to happen could wait until morning. I set my thermos on the desk, took a seat, and stared at the rules pinned to the corkboard again. The edges of the paper fluttered with every vibration from the heater, like the words were breathing. Rule 3. Never feed or talk to the children outside the station after dusk. At the time, I'd brushed that one off. I figured it was local superstition, something to keep teenagers from loitering around the property. But Whitmore didn't write rules for make-believe. The clock on the wall read 12:42 a.m. The night outside glowed faintly blue, that endless Alaskan twilight. I poured myself a cup of coffee, leaned back, tried not to think about the headlights, the voice, the badge. Then came the sound. Tap, 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 soft, delicate, like fingertips against glass. I turned toward the front door. Nothing. Another tap, louder this time. Then again. It was coming from the lobby window. I walked over slowly, every step heavy on the wooden floor. The light from the hallway caught the frost on the glass, and behind it, 3 small shapes stood in the snow. Children. 2 boys, 1 girl, maybe 7, 8 years old. Winter coats zipped up, hats pulled low. Their faces were pale, not from cold, but something else. Too smooth, too still. They just stood there, looking in. The smallest one pressed a mittened hand against the glass. The frost melted under it, revealing eyes that didn't blink. Then their lips moved, all 3, in perfect unison. "Can we come in?" My throat tightened. There was an old candy jar on the counter near the dispatch desk. I don't even remember reaching for it. Reflex, maybe. I grabbed it, unscrewed the lid, and fished out a few chocolate bars. As I turned toward the window again, I froze. Rule 3. Never feed or talk to the children outside the station after dusk. The paper on the wall fluttered again, like it was reminding me. I put the candy down slowly. My heart thudded once, hard, against my ribs. The girl outside tilted her head. The movement was sharp, jerky, too exact. Like a puppet's motion, not a child's. Then she smiled. Not a happy smile, one that stretched too wide, the corners of her mouth trembling as if the muscles didn't understand how to stop. I forced my voice steady. "You kids need help? Where are your parents?" The smallest boy raised his hand and pointed behind me, toward the hallway. I turned, flashlight ready. Nothing there. When I looked back at the window, they were gone. Just 3 sets of small footprints leading away from the glass, straight across the lot and into the woods. Barely disturbed the snow. I exhaled, long and slow, trying to convince myself I hadn't just seen what I saw. Kids, that's all. Lost, maybe. Cold. I stepped outside to check. The cold hit instantly, so sharp it burned. The air smelled metallic again, like iron and ozone. I followed the footprints toward the tree line. The closer I got, the stranger they looked. Each step seemed lighter than the last, the impression fading until they just stopped, mid-stride. Nothing but undisturbed snow beyond that. No branches broken, no signs of movement, just stillness. Then I heard it, the sound of children laughing. Soft at first, drifting from the trees. Then louder, closer. The kind of laughter that's supposed to be joyful but somehow wasn't. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Chief?" I called into my radio, voice shaking. "You copy?" Static. The laughter died instantly. Then, a whisper, so faint I thought it was the wind. "We're still hungry." I turned toward the sound. The woods were motionless. The snow glowed faintly under the cruiser's headlights, but the darkness beyond the first few trees was absolute. I started backing away, one slow step at a time. My breath fogged in front of me, but behind it, another cloud formed. Lower, smaller, like someone else was breathing with me. I didn't turn around. I walked back to the station, locked the door, and sat down at my desk. That's when I saw the candy jar. Empty. Every wrapper gone. The lid lying sideways on the floor. I stared at it for a long time before checking the clock. 3:07 a.m. Of course. My pulse spiked as I grabbed the flashlight and headed toward the holding cell. The corridor felt longer than usual, the hum of the heater muffled under the sound of my boots. When I reached the cell, the door was open. Inside, the metal bench was covered in tiny, wet footprints, small enough to belong to children. They led straight up the wall, across the ceiling, and disappeared through the air vent. I backed away slowly, whispering to myself, half prayer, half disbelief. "Never feed or talk to the children." Something rustled above the vent, then a soft thud, like something landing lightly behind me. I turned. The girl from outside stood at the end of the hall. Same coat, same stillness. Her eyes black as the gaps between the stars. She smiled again. "Thank you for the candy," she whispered. Then she turned and walked straight through the wall. The air went dead silent. The only thing left was the faint sound of the heater kicking back on, and the paper rules pinned to the board behind me curling in the heat. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, the chief didn't ask questions. She just looked at the empty candy jar, then at me. "I told you," she said quietly. "Whitmore always collects its due. One kindness at a time." She turned toward the window, watching the snow drift down. Then she added, almost to herself, "They look like children because that's what we miss most." There's a particular kind of quiet that happens around 3 in the morning. The kind that doesn't feel like silence, but like something listening back. By the time the clock on the wall crept toward 3:07 a.m., I was already wide awake. The heater had gone off again. The lights in the hallway flickered between a dim orange and something colder, like the color of the moon under ice. I hadn't moved from my desk since the children. Their laughter still echoed in my skull, looping between memory and imagination. But the rules didn't care how I felt. Rule 4. At exactly 3:07 a.m. check the holding cell. Even if it's empty. Especially if it's empty. I looked up at the clock. 3:06:50. 10 seconds. I took my flashlight, unholstered my sidearm, habit, not comfort, and started down the hall. Each step creaked under my boots like the building was exhaling. As I passed the chief's office, I noticed her door was open now. Light off, but I could hear faint breathing inside. Slow, steady, too slow to be human. I kept walking. The air grew thicker the closer I got to the holding cell. It's strange. In a building that small, you start to feel distance differently. The hallway stretched longer, like each step was sinking into water. By the time I reached the end, the clock above the evidence locker clicked over. 3:07. I unlocked the security gate, stepped into the cell block, and froze. The door to the single holding cell, the only one we had, was hanging half open. I knew I'd locked it earlier. I remember hearing the latch snap shut. A low chill rolled through the air, like the station had started to breathe on its own. "Whitmore PD," I called softly, flashlight cutting through the dark. "This area is restricted." The beam passed over the cot, the toilet, the concrete walls. Empty. Except Something shimmered on the bars. Faint frost, shaped like fingerprints, on the inside. I moved closer, breath fogging in front of me. When the light hit the frost full on, I could see they weren't random. Each print was pressed deeper than normal, like someone had been pulling, not pushing. And at the center of the cell floor, the condensation had pooled into a perfect handprint, smaller than mine, child-sized. I crouched, heart hammering. The air felt thick, wet, like breathing through soaked fabric. That's when I heard it. A man's whisper. Close, too close. Should have stayed on Route 9. I whipped around. Nothing. The cell behind me was still empty. The voice hadn't come from the hallway. It came from inside. "Who's there?" I barked, stepping back, gun raised. The radio on my shoulder crackled once. Static, then a low voice humming. I could make out words, but not clearly. Something like, "Don't check," twice. I looked back at the bars. The frost had changed. Now, instead of random smudges, it formed faint letters. S-T-A-Y. The temperature dropped so fast, my breath crystallized. The flashlight dimmed, flickering. The hum of the heater died completely. Then, a sound I'll never forget. Metal scraping, like nails dragged across the inside of the holding cell door. The beam hit movement, a blur of something pale, pressing against the bars. A hand, trembling. Skin slick with frost, veins dark. Then a face, or what used to be one. Half frozen, jaw slightly unhinged, eyes fogged like glass. It was wearing a uniform. The badge number on the collar read 22137, mine. I stumbled back, hit the wall hard enough to drop the flashlight. The beam rolled across the floor, landing on the far corner. Empty again. The figure was gone. I grabbed the light, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. Then the radio flared again. My voice, calm but hollow. "Unit 3 to dispatch. Suspect detained. Holding cell secure." It wasn't a recording. It was live. I hadn't keyed the mic. The realization hit like a bullet. Whatever this thing was, it knew the protocol. It knew my number. It wasn't imitating me. It was replacing me. The hallway lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. Everything looked normal again, except the cell door was now closed, locked, and scrawled in frost across the inside of the glass window was a single sentence. I checked the cell. "Now it's your turn." I backed away, whispering, "No, no, no." Behind me, the chief's voice came from the dark hallway. "Good. You did it right this time." I turned. She was standing there, half in shadow, eyes reflecting the flashlight beam like an animal's. "Chief," I said, struggling for words, "there's something in the cell." She nodded once. "I know." "You know?" Her voice was low, tired. "That's where they go when the town takes them. It's how Whitmore resets." I stared at her, unable to speak. She stepped closer, put a gloved hand on my shoulder. "Now you understand, Reed. The rules aren't about survival. They're about containment." Her hand tightened. "Everything we do here, every protocol, every line of ink on that paper, it all came from something that wanted out. So we follow the rules, and it stays in." I swallowed hard. "What happens if we stop?" The chief's eyes drifted toward the cell. "Then Whitmore writes new rules." A low metallic groan echoed from the holding cell, like steel under pressure. Then a sharp crack. The frost handprints began to melt, dripping like blood down the bars. The chief whispered, "It's awake again. Stay out of the room." We both watched as the cell door trembled once, then went still. When it was over, she handed me a new sheet of paper. Same typewriter font, same yellowed page, fresh ink. A new rule, handwritten at the bottom. Rule 8. Never check the holding cell twice. I looked up at her, terrified. Who wrote this? She exhaled slowly. You did. The clock on the wall clicked over. 3:08 a.m. And as I turned the paper in my hand, the ink was still wet. The chief woke me before dawn. No greeting, no questions. Just a knock, and that same flat tone that never left her voice. Bridge check, she said. You're on it. That was it. No explanation, no coffee. I pulled on my jacket, grabbed the patrol keys, and followed her outside. The cold was different that morning. Sharper, cleaner, like the air had been stripped of sound. Even the snow seemed afraid to fall. The town looked dead, not sleeping, dead. No lights in any of the cabins, no smoke from chimneys, just a frozen silence hanging over everything like a fog. Where's everyone? I asked. The chief didn't look at me. Inside? Because of the temperature? She stopped at her cruiser, opened the door, and looked up toward the northern ridge, where the old suspension bridge crossed the river. No, she said, because it froze. I frowned. The river? She met my eyes. The rules say not to look at it, but we need to make sure it's still holding. There was no point asking what that meant. Whitmore never answered straight questions anyway. I drove alone. The road to the bridge wound through the pine forest, branches drooping under snow, heavy enough to creak with every gust. My headlights caught glints of ice between the trees, each one reflecting like 1,000 tiny mirrors. The closer I got, the quieter the world became. Even the radio static had vanished. When I stepped out, the sound of my boots on the planks echoed like gunshots. The bridge was old. Steel frame, wood slats, built long before the department existed. It hung over the Whitmore River, a black ribbon that cut through the valley like a scar. Only now, it wasn't moving. The current, always fierce this time of year, had stopped completely, frozen solid. I knelt near the edge, careful not to lean too far over. The ice wasn't clear like lake ice. It was milky, cloudy, like something underneath had been stirred up during the freeze. Rule 5. Don't look directly at the river when it freezes solid. I remembered the chief's tone when she'd said it the first time, like it was more than superstition, more like a dare you only survive once. But curiosity's a disease that doesn't care about warnings, and I was already infected. I pulled out my flashlight, angled it downward. At first, all I saw was frost, tiny air bubbles caught in suspension. Then movement. Something shifted under the ice. I stepped back instinctively. The beam caught the faint outline of a face, human, pale, eyes closed. Then another, and another. A dozen, maybe more. Faces pressed beneath the ice, blurred by the thickness but unmistakable. The light reflected off their frozen features, making it look like they were breathing under there, waiting for me to blink. Jesus, I whispered. They weren't random. They were arranged, layered in a spiral pattern, turning toward a dark center somewhere beneath the bridge. I tried to count, but every time I blinked, more faces seemed to appear. Men, women, children, their mouths slightly open, as if mid-scream. My brain scrambled for logic. Could have been old bodies from a wreck, or the river thawed and refroze too fast. Anything but what it looked like. Then one of the faces moved. Just a twitch. The lips pressed together. The eyes rolled upward until the whites disappeared. The ice cracked softly under my boots. Rule 5 screamed in the back of my head, don't look directly at the river when it freezes solid. I stepped back fast, but I'd already seen too much. The shapes beneath the ice began to shift, slow, circular, as if something enormous was turning underneath them. Then came the sound, a deep, low groan from the ice itself, like metal bending under pressure, or something breathing through the crust. I fell backward, flashlight clattering across the boards. That's when I saw it. The frozen river stretched far beyond the bridge, maybe a mile, but in the moonlight I could see faint lines running through the ice, connecting the faces beneath in a pattern that wasn't random. It looked like veins, and the dark shape at the center was moving, slowly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. My breath fogged the air, trembling. "Chief," I whispered into the radio, "you need to see this." Static. Then her voice, calm, almost resigned. "Don't describe it, Reed. Just tell me if it's still frozen. It's solid. But then leave it alone. You knew about this." She didn't answer. The ice groaned again, louder now, cracking in long, jagged lines that spidered outward from the center. One line shot directly beneath my feet. I jumped back, just as the wood plank beneath me split open. Freezing air rushed upward, carrying a smell like rot and iron. Something brushed against my boot from below the ice. I pointed the flashlight down. A hand was pressed against the underside, palm out, fingers spread. Then another beside it, and another. Hands clawing upward, the skin gray and translucent, each one pounding faintly against the frozen surface like muffled knocks. The cracks spread faster now. The ice pulsed with each hit, glowing faintly with a blue light from underneath. Not natural, not reflection. It was coming from below. "Chief," I shouted into the radio, "there are bodies moving under the—" "Turn around, Reed," she snapped. "Now." I froze. Her tone wasn't panic. It was command, the kind that came from experience. I backed away slowly, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the bridge railing. The light beneath the ice faded. The cracks stopped spreading. The hands slowly sank back down into the dark. The silence returned, thick and absolute. Then, from deep below the ice, came one last sound. A single, long exhale. Not wind, not water. Breath. By the time I got back to the station, the chief was waiting in the parking lot, coat buttoned, face grim. "You looked, didn't you?" she asked quietly. I didn't answer. She didn't need me to. She sighed. "You never really see the river. You just catch its reflection looking back." "What is it?" I asked. "The reason for the rules," she said. "The town's built on its grave." I stared at her. "You mean that thing under the ice?" "Not under. Inside." She turned and started walking toward the building. "Every few decades, the river stops," she said, "and the faces rise. They're the ones who didn't follow protocol, the ones it used. The rules keep it contained. The water keeps it sleeping. But when it freezes," she looked back at me, "it remembers." She stopped by the door and added softly, "You hear it breathing, you run, you see it move, you pray. But if it ever starts to thaw before sunrise," her voice dropped to a whisper, "you check the holding cell." I swallowed hard. "Why?" "Because whatever's in that river doesn't stay in the river when it wakes up." That night, long after she left, I found myself staring out the window toward the frozen valley. And for the first time, I realized something terrifying. The pattern of the cracks in the ice, those branching, vein-like lines. They weren't random. They stretched outward, directly beneath the town of Whitmore, and they were spreading. It's funny how the mind adjusts to fear. By the time I left the river that night, my body had already stopped shaking. My thoughts were clear, calm even. It wasn't courage. It was something worse. Resignation. I knew the rules now. I knew what breaking them meant. And still, as I drove back toward town, the old police radio sitting on the dash seemed louder than ever, like it was waiting for me to forget Rule 6. Rule 6. If you hear your own voice on the radio, don't respond. Simple, until you actually hear it. The road stretched endless under the fog, the cruiser headlights cutting through mist that seemed to move on its own. Every few seconds, I checked the rearview mirror, habit by now, half expecting to see something crawling out of the dark behind me. But the road was empty, too empty. The radio crackled suddenly, soft at first, like distant thunder. Then, "Unit 3, you left the door open." My hand froze halfway to the mic. That wasn't dispatch. The voice, the rhythm, the breath between words, it was mine. Identical. I killed the radio instantly, flicking the power switch off. The static died, but the echo of that voice hung in the air, vibrating in my chest like it was still there. For the next few miles, I didn't breathe, just drove, eyes fixed on the empty road. Then, another sound. Not through the radio this time. Behind me, a faint click, like a door latch settling shut. I glanced at the rearview mirror. Someone was sitting in the back seat. I didn't see them appear. They were just there. Dark shape, shoulders squared. Same uniform, same badge. For a second, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. It looked like me. Not a reflection, not a trick of light. It was my face, my posture, my gear. It was sitting perfectly still, hands folded, eyes open, watching the back of my head. I gripped the wheel harder. My throat was dry. "Chief," I whispered into the dead mic, "if you're hearing this, I've got—" Static exploded across the speakers, even though the radio was still off. Then my voice came through again. Calm. "Unit 3 to dispatch. Situation contained." My blood ran cold. I hadn't said that. The voice in the radio sounded just like me, except it was ahead of me, like it was narrating actions I hadn't taken yet. I looked up again. The thing in the back seat tilted its head slightly, the same way I do when I'm trying to understand a suspect. Then it smiled. That slow, human but not smile that stretched too wide. "Stop the car." I froze. The voice came not from the radio, but from the thing behind me. Low, smooth, me. "Stop the car, Officer Reed." My foot pressed harder on the gas. The cruiser engine whined, tires sliding slightly on the frost. The mirror flickered. For a heartbeat, there were two of me in that reflection. One in the driver's seat, one behind. Both moving perfectly in sync. Then the radio snapped back on by itself. "Unit 3, my voice said again, perfectly calm. "Officer in pursuit of suspect, heading south on Route 9, requesting backup." "No," I muttered, shaking my head. "No one's out here." But the headlights ahead lit up another cruiser parked sideways across the road. A mirror image of mine. Same plate, same mud stains. The spotlight flicked on, flooding my windshield. And standing beside the other cruiser, another me. Same face, same uniform. Holding the same radio mic. I slammed the brakes. The cruiser fishtailed, snow spraying across the hood. The engine sputtered and died. The figure in the road raised its mic. My voice echoed through both radios simultaneously. "Unit 3, suspect has been contained. Proceeding to transfer." I sat there, frozen. Every instinct screamed to run, to move, to do something. But the air around me felt thick, dense, like time had slowed. In the mirror, the version of me in the back seat leaned forward, close enough that I could see the frost forming on its lips as it whispered, "Switch." The radio light blinked red, recording. Then everything went black. When I woke up, the cruiser engine was running again. The heater was blowing warm air. The windshield was clear. I blinked a few times, tried to remember. The chase, the other cruiser, the voice. It felt distant, like a half-remembered dream. The clock read 3:07 a.m. I grabbed the mic. "Dispatch, this is Unit 3. Status report on..." Static. Then my voice replied, "Copy that, Unit 3. All clear." The radio clicked off. That's when I noticed my hands. The gloves. Not mine. Too small. Too tight. I looked down. The badge on my chest. Still 2137. But the nameplate read M. Hensley. The chief's name. I reached for the mirror. But something in me hesitated. I didn't want to see. Still, slowly, I turned it. The face staring back wasn't mine. It was hers. Expression blank. Eyes wide. Lips moving just enough to form words I didn't feel in my own throat. Rule 6. Don't answer yourself. The reflection smiled. Then the radio hissed one last time. Transfer complete. When I stumbled back into the station at dawn, the chief was waiting. Or at least, I thought it was her. She looked at me, her expression unreadable. "Rough night?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, heard some weird chatter on the radio." She smiled faintly. "Good. Means you're sinking fine." Sinking? She placed a new sheet of paper on the desk. Same yellowed typewriter font. Same eerie calm in her voice. "Rule 9, she said. "If you hear someone else answer your call sign, don't come back to the station." I stared at the page. The ink was still wet. My name was already printed at the bottom. That night, the cruiser logs showed 2 Unit 3s patrolling at once. Only one came back, and I still don't know if it was me. By the time the first hint of dawn touched the horizon, I was barely holding myself together. The radio had been silent for hours, the engine humming under its own nervous rhythm as I drove back through the ghostly streets of Whitmore. The snow had stopped falling. The entire town looked carved out of ice, frozen mid-breath. When I pulled into the station, the chief's cruiser was already there, the engine off, but a faint warmth still drifted from the exhaust pipe, like she'd just arrived. Inside, every light was on. Too bright, too clean, like the place was trying too hard to look normal. She was waiting for me in the hallway, standing by the briefing room door, still as stone. Her voice, when she finally spoke, wasn't commanding anymore. It was almost gentle. "End of shift, Officer Reed. You know the last rule." I nodded. My hand trembled as I reached for the chalk on the desk. "Rule 7. Before dawn, write your name on the board in the briefing room. If your name's already there, leave town immediately." I stared at the whiteboard on the far wall. Names stretched across it. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Some written neatly, others in shaking, frantic handwriting, each one followed by a badge number, each one crossed out, all except for one blank space left open at the bottom. My space. The chief stood behind me, her presence heavy in the room. The hum of the lights above buzzed like flies trapped behind glass. I raised the chalk and wrote "Reed, 2137. The sound echoed sharp across the walls. The chalk snapped in half in my hand. I took a step back, and that's when I saw it. The name was already there. Same handwriting, same pressure, same badge number. Reed, 2137, but written faintly beneath, like it had been erased and written again. Over and over. The chief's face changed. Not shock, not pity, recognition. "Then you were never the first," she said quietly. I turned to her, pulse pounding. "What do you mean? Someone else used my number?" She shook her head slowly. "No, Reed. They were you." I stared at her. "That's impossible." She walked closer, her boots clicking softly on the tile. "Every few years, the protocol repeats. A new transfer, a new badge number, a new Reed. You come here thinking you're replacing someone who left, but no one leaves Whitmore. They just reset." My chest tightened. "You're saying, what? That I've done this before?" She looked toward the board. "You've done it many times." I took another step back, the air thickening in my throat. "No, I'd remember." "Would you?" she asked softly. "Every version says that. Every one of you denies it right before dawn." The hallway clock ticked louder now. Too loud, like the gears were grinding metal. "I'm not him," I whispered. "I'm not whoever came before." The chief tilted her head. "Then how did you know which road to take your first night? How did you know the bridge was east of town? How did you know the codes before I taught you?" I froze. She was right. I hadn't thought about it before, but from the very first night, I'd been remembering without knowing. The chief turned toward the board again, her voice distant, reverent almost. "The town doesn't forget. It keeps what it needs. The faces, the voices, the hands that follow orders. It uses us like pages in a book, one name at a time." My throat went dry. "So who writes the rules?" She smiled faintly. Not kind, resigned. The same one that enforces them. The floor beneath us vibrated softly, like the heartbeat from the frozen river miles away. The overhead lights flickered once, dimming to a sickly yellow. Then came a faint scratching sound from inside the walls. I looked toward the whiteboard again. The names were changing, letters sliding and rearranging themselves, the chalk smearing and reforming. Every name on the list was merging, folding inward, until there was only one left, repeating line after line, row after row. Read. 2137. The sound grew louder, the scraping, the writing, until it drowned out everything else. I stepped closer. The board wasn't smooth anymore. The surface pulsed faintly, like skin under pressure. Behind me, the chief whispered, "You see, you're the ink now." The board trembled. The letters began to carve themselves deeper into the surface, white chalk turning dark, gouged into the wall. Then, under the last entry, fresh writing appeared. Rule 10. When you see your name, turn around. I froze. The chief's reflection in the glass frame beside the board was smiling, but she wasn't moving. "Chief," I whispered, "what's behind me?" Her reflection blinked once, then spoke with my voice. "Me." I turned. There was another me standing in the doorway, face pale, eyes wide, same badge, same uniform. He looked at me, the same way I had looked at the board, confused, terrified. He whispered, "Chief said to sign in. Is it morning already?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. He stepped forward, the chalk in his hand, and when his eyes met mine, I felt something pull, a weight, dragging down, through my chest. The lights above us flickered. The board behind me hissed like steam escaping a pipe. The chief's voice echoed faintly, distant now, like a recording playing through the walls. "Don't fight it, Reed. It's easier the second time." My hand moved on its own. I took the chalk from him and wrote one last line under the names. Reed, 2137. When I turned back, the other me was gone. Only the chief remained, standing by the door, eyes hollow. She whispered, "Welcome back." Then she handed me an envelope. Old, yellowed, familiar. "Read these before your first night shift," she said. I looked down at it. The same envelope, the same title stamped in fading ink. Whitmore Protocol, Night Division. And somewhere deep in the walls, I could hear the scratching start again. Writing, rewriting, always writing. That morning, when the sun finally broke over Whitmore, the board in the briefing room gleamed under the new light. Every name had been erased, except one. Reed, 2137. The ink was still wet. By the time the sun broke over Whitmore, I'd stopped pretending I was still a man on duty. I was a man in orbit, circling something ancient I couldn't understand, dragged by gravity I couldn't fight. The station windows glowed pale gold with morning light. But light in Whitmore never meant safety. It just meant the dark had gone inside. The chief sat at her desk, staring out at the frozen trees. Steam rose from her coffee mug in slow spirals, though the mug never seemed to cool. I stood there for a long time, just watching her. There was something about the way the sunlight hit her face. Too even, too still, like it wasn't landing on her at all. "You should rest," she said softly, still looking out the window. "Not tired?" I lied. She nodded once. "No, you're never tired. That's part of it." Her words hung there, heavy. I didn't ask what she meant. Finally, she sighed. "You're ready to hear it now." "The truth?" I asked. "The part that makes sense," she said. "There's never the whole thing." She gestured to the chair across from her. I sat. The desk between us looked like a grave marker, polished, lonely, sacred. After a long silence, she spoke. "Whitmore isn't a town," she said. "Not really. Never was." I frowned. "Then what is it?" She turned from the window. Her eyes were gray now, cloudy, like river ice. It's a containment zone, built in 1923, when they thought they could cage time. She leaned back in her chair, the leather creaking softly. The locals used to call it the second dawn, a phenomenon that repeats the same night, over and over, until it finishes feeding. It started as a rumor in the logging camps. Men would vanish. Whole shifts would wake up to the same morning twice. I swallowed. A time loop? She shook her head. Not time. Memory. I blinked. I don't follow. The second dawn doesn't repeat hours. It repeats people. The night never ends. It just wears a new face. And when one of us breaks the rules, it needs a replacement to keep the cycle stable. That's why every new officer has the same name, the same badge. The town builds you again from what it remembers. Her tone was calm. Too calm. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, but she didn't blink. You're saying I'm not real? You're real, she said. You're just not original. I felt the room tilt, like my brain couldn't find footing on the truth. She slid a folder across the desk. Old, frayed, marked Whitmore Incident File, number 00. Inside were photographs, black and white. Men in early police uniforms standing beside the same building I was sitting in now. Only the faces. I leaned closer. Every one of them was me. Different eras, same eyes, same scar over the brow. My throat locked. That's impossible. They said that the first 100 times too, she murmured. Who are you, really? I asked. She hesitated, eyes drifting toward the clock on the wall. It was ticking backward now, seconds unwinding like a heartbeat in reverse. I was the first, she said finally. Marla Hensley, civilian radio operator, U.S. Geological Survey, 1923. We found it under the riverbed when the ground caved during a freeze. Thought it was a fault line. Thought it was nothing. What was it? A mouth, she whispered. A crack in the earth that breathed. She rubbed her temples, her voice thinning. They called it a geological anomaly in the reports, but the locals knew better. They said it was the Earth's first death, the place where Dawn went to die. She looked at me again, eyes sharp. It spoke to us, not in words, in rules. It gave us patterns, procedures, boundaries to follow. We thought we were making law. We were just following its instructions. I shook my head. You're saying this thing, whatever's in the river, it's writing the protocol? Not writing, she said. Dictating. My stomach turned cold. Then what's it for? Why the rules? Her voice lowered. The rules keep it dreaming. Every action we take in sequence, every midnight call ignored, every name written at dawn. It's like a ritual. The second dawn doesn't feed on blood. It feeds on order, on repetition, on memory. I stood, pacing. So, if we stop following them, it wakes up, she said simply. And when it wakes up, it remembers every version of us it's ever copied. The fluorescent lights above flickered, humming louder. The air thickened, pressing on my chest like water. So, the holding cell, I began, is the anchor, she finished. That's where it keeps what it can't erase, the fragments, the echoes. The others, I whispered. She nodded. The ones who broke sequence. I felt the weight of it then, not fear, not confusion, just inevitability. Every rule, every patrol, every face on that whiteboard. All part of a system built not to protect the town, but to contain it. Why me? I asked quietly. Why keep bringing me back? Because you follow the rules, she said. You always have. You were the first officer to survive a full cycle. You made the protocol work. Her expression softened, almost proud. You're its favorite. I felt sick. And you? I asked. You said you were the first. Why are you still here? She smiled faintly. It didn't reach her eyes. Someone has to train the replacements. Her skin shimmered faintly in the sunlight, like frost forming under the surface. For a second, her features blurred. lines fading, reforming, like a reflection under moving water. "Chief," I said, voice cracking, "what happens when it stops needing us?" Her face went still. "It won't. That's the point." The light outside shifted suddenly, the sunrise freezing mid-air, stuck halfway over the ridge. The shadows in the room stopped moving. The chief stood, her chair sliding back without a sound. "It's starting again," she said quietly. "What is?" "The night." I looked at the clock. 6:03 a.m. The second hand wasn't moving. "It's early," I whispered. "No," she said. "It's repeating." The radio crackled on her desk. Static, then a voice. My voice. "Chief, this is Unit 3 reporting for first shift. Just arrived in Whitmore." I stared at it, trembling. "That's not possible." She turned to me, her expression unreadable. "It always starts the same way. Snowdrifts blur the sign. Welcome to Whitmore, a safe haven since 1923. Tears stung my eyes. "Please don't make me go through it again." Her voice broke for the first time. "It's not me making you, son." She reached into the drawer and pulled out a yellowed envelope. The same one she'd given me on my first night. "Read these before your first shift," she said softly, sliding it across the desk. I looked down at my hands, shaking. And there it was again, the envelope. Old, familiar. The title faded, but legible. Whitmore Protocol, Night Division. I whispered, "What happens if I refuse?" She gave a sad smile. "Then it writes you anyway." The radio clicked again. "Unit 3 to dispatch. Snow's picking up on the ridge. See you soon." The chief's eyes darkened. "Welcome back, Officer Reed." And as the light from the window dimmed, I realized the sun wasn't setting. It was being rewound. The same snowflakes that had fallen hours ago drifted upward, back into the clouds. And the world blinked. Reset. Cut to black. Faintly, under the static of the radio, a voice whispers the opening line again. "Snowdrifts blur the sign. Welcome to Whitmore, a safe haven since 1923. The moment the chief handed me the envelope again, I knew I wouldn't open it. Not this time. I stuffed it into my jacket pocket, grabbed the cruiser keys off the hook, and walked straight out the door. The station looked almost peaceful in daylight, snow glittering across the roof, the flag frozen mid-whip. It could have been any small Alaskan outpost, but I knew better. Whitmore wasn't a town, it was a habit, and I was finally ready to break it. The road to the airstrip was half buried in powder, the horizon glowing pale and soft, as if the world was holding its breath. I'd left my badge on the dashboard. The radio turned off. Every instinct in me screamed that leaving wasn't possible, that nobody ever left Whitmore. But if this was just another version of me, another copy sent to repeat the same rules, then maybe, just maybe, disobedience was the only form of living I had left. Halfway there, I looked in the mirror. The back seat was empty. For the first time since I could remember, it actually felt like mine. I almost smiled. The snow-covered hills gave way to the flat expanse where the airstrip waited. A single, rust-striped hangar and a fuel drum half buried in frost. A bush plane sat in the distance, its wings glinting orange in the sunrise. I stopped the cruiser, heart pounding. For the first time, I could see the edge of Whitmore, the end of the loop. Freedom. I got out, boots sinking into soft snow, and for a few seconds, I let myself breathe. The air was sharp, clean, almost human again. Then the sun began to move wrong. It stopped climbing, hung there, suspended above the ridge like a coin balanced on its edge. Then, slowly, it started to fall backward. The light changed. That gold warmth drained out, replaced by a dim red hue that bled across the snow like rust in water. The wind picked up, carrying the faint sound of a whisper. I turned. The road behind me was gone, swallowed by fog rolling in from the valley. From the radio I'd turned off, static bled through anyway. "Unit 3, My breath froze mid-air. The voice was soft, tired. Check the holding cell. I reached for the radio without meaning to. My fingers brushed the mic, still cold, still lifeless. Yet the voice came again. Please, Reed. Just one more time. It sounded like the chief, but underneath, layered in the static, was my voice too. I opened the passenger door. The envelope was there on the seat, just where I'd thrown it. Except the paper inside wasn't folded anymore. It was spread flat, glowing faintly in the dim red light. The title still read Whitmore Protocol, Night Division. But the ink was moving, reshaping itself letter by letter, like something rewriting from underneath the page. At the top, where the chief's name used to be, new words burned through the paper, authored by Unit 3, Reed. My stomach dropped. The rules beneath it were changing too, each line bleeding into the next, letters bending, rearranging. Rule 1, never answer a call from the forest after midnight, became Rule 1, always answer. Rule 2, if you see headlights on Route 9 with no sound, wait, became Rule 2, follow the light. One by one, the rules inverted. By the time I reached the bottom, a new line was forming in fresh ink. Still wet, still crawling across the page like handwriting born from nowhere. Rule 8, wake it up. The radio popped again, louder this time. Unit 3, status check. Do you copy? My voice, except not from the radio. It came from the air around me. From the snow, the wind, the trees, every direction at once. I stumbled backward toward the airstrip. The horizon split open. The sky tore in half, light and dark bending against each other. The red glow deepened, and for a moment, I could see shapes moving inside it. Vast, shifting outlines under the clouds, as if the sun itself had begun to breathe. A low, thunderous pulse rolled through the ground, the same rhythm I'd heard under the frozen river. The second dawn. It wasn't asleep anymore. The radio screamed, every frequency bursting into life, my voice echoing through every one. Unit 3 reporting. Copy, copy, copy. I dropped the mic, fell to my knees. The world was vibrating now. Buildings in the distance blurring, trees bending toward the sound like they were listening. The envelope in my hand caught fire. No smoke, just light. Through the haze, I saw movement near the hangar. A figure stepping out of the red fog, wearing my uniform, holding a flashlight. Another me. He raised his hand in greeting. Same smile, same exhaustion. Then another figure behind him. And another. A line of them, all identical, walking out of the light, spreading across the snow like shadows peeling off the same wall. I turned back toward the cruiser, its headlights flicked on by themselves, engine roaring to life. The radio whispered one last time, "Welcome to Whitmore, Officer Reed. You're right on time." The sun reversed completely, sinking below the horizon. Darkness fell, sharp and sudden. And in the black glass of the cruiser window, I saw it, reflected faintly behind my shoulder. Not the chief, not me, something larger, eyes like twin dawns, smiling. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in the station lobby, snow melting off my boots, the smell of coffee. A brass bell jingled behind me. A woman's voice said, "Close that door before it follows you in." I turned. The chief, older, colder, handed me a familiar yellowed envelope. "Read these before your first night shift," she said. I took it, fingers trembling, and just for a second, just one, I thought I heard the river breathing underneath the floor. The camera pans up. Outside the station, the sign reads, "Welcome to Whitmore, a safe haven since 1923. Snow drifts blur the letters. A faint red light glows from beneath the frozen ground, and somewhere, under the ice, something exhales, long, patient, awake. The snow keeps falling in Whitmore, and maybe it always will. Every sunrise here is borrowed, every officer rewritten. And somewhere beneath the frozen river, something ancient is still listening, waiting for the next name to sign the board. You've just reached the end of the Whitmore Protocol, but endings mean something different here, because in Whitmore, no story ever really ends. It just starts over. If this story left you haunted, or if you could feel the cold of Whitmore creeping through the static, hit like, share, and subscribe for more grounded horror stories that feel too real to be fiction. Tell me where you're watching from, and if you ever woke up to the same dawn twice, maybe you've already been here before.